Sorry about that. Dr. Wolkin, in addition to serving here on the Science Committee, I also serve on Transportation and Infrastructure, and I represent Southeast Texas and have 4 ports in my district. I recognize the importance of our navigational ship channels. With that being said, one of the things I find very interesting on this topic that's relevant to my committees and my district is the possibility of 2 trans-Arctic commercial shipping routes that are opening up. This isn't to say that I want to see all the glaciers melt and the sea levels rise uncontrollably, but if there are inevitable changes, I want to make sure that the United States is positioned to be economically fortified, and I know that the Russians are certainly exploiting newly opened up shipping lanes, ice-free zones, and even claiming certain areas that were considered in international waters are no longer that, but belongs to Russia. So if you see the Department of Transportation, how do you see the Department of Transportation or even the U.S. Coast Guard interacting with coordinated multi-agency collaboration that you say is needed?
Yes, thanks for the question. I'll answer in 2 ways. The first is that what you speak of is really an incredibly important issue, and economics and national security really do come to mind, and that's a sea ice issue in the north principally. And reduced sea ice, of course, is offering opportunities to enter into the Arctic and explore and ship. And that comes with fantastic opportunities, of course, and a lot of perilous conditions that could cause lots of environmental damage if not done right. Having a multi-agency approach is incredibly important a little bit farther south, and you mentioned the Coast Guard. We have changes in Alaska that are impacting many of the fjords and the transportation routes in the south. And some of the changes in the cryosphere, changes in the snow, the ice, and the permafrost in the mountains are unpredictable to us right now. We don't have enough information. And so the Coast Guard communicating with various universities and agencies about how stable the slopes are, about how fast conditions are changing in certain areas could really be an asset to the Coast Guard as they respond to emergencies or possible disasters from cruise ships or fishing boats in different areas. I will point out an example of in 2015, there was one of the world's largest snow rock avalanches into the Tyndall Fjord. And in the process of that collapse, the tsunami that resulted from the rock falling into the fjord was enormous. It caused a trim line, like the bathtub ring, that was around 600 feet high, and any fishing boat caught in that, or Coast Guard vessel, or tourist ship, would have been destroyed.
Right.
So communication about the data that we have to the individuals who will be working in these different areas, the federal agencies such as the Coast Guard, it's critical that we have this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And one other question. Some experts have predicted that our currently available mapping and navigation and ship capabilities are going to limit just how frequently and successfully we use these potential routes. And Dr. Wolkin, and to all of our witnesses, when conducting research on ice depth and volume, is there also efforts to improve commercial shipping potential, such as data needed for mapping? Dr. Wolkin, I'll ask you first, and I'll go to Dr. Pfeffer.
Yes, a lot of the work that's being done in the fjords in Alaska are specifically focusing on the nearshore environment. And so the exchange of dynamics of interactions between the glaciers and the water and that environment. And so in the process of doing that, wonderful maps of the fjord are being generated. Lots of different surveys of the coastlines are being generated in the process. And so the really great part about this is that we can have overlapping interests being served with good research in the right areas. And I think that's where this this idea of having these interagency collaborations, these multiple perspectives, this team approach is really important.
Okay, great. Dr. Pfeffer, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, I wanted to respond because your description of the situation in Texas reminds me a little bit of an experience that I had about 5 or 6 years ago, where I was employed as a consultant for the Prince William Sound Citizens Advisory Committee, which is an environmental group that was set up in the state of Alaska following the Valdez oil spill to provide environmental oversight in Prince William Sound, which includes the town of Valdez and southern terminus of the Alaska pipeline. And their specific concern was icebergs. The Columbia Glacier in Alaska, which is one of the glaciers that I've worked on for many years, was a major iceberg producer, and those icebergs came out into the shipping lanes. And the Alaska, which is the operating company for the pipeline, and the Coast Guard were both concerned about what future iceberg hazards were going to look like. Specifically, they had an ice detection radar system that had come to the end of its useful lifetime, and they had to replace it. And what their specific question was, do we have to be worrying about icebergs for the next 100 years or the next 5 years? And so I worked with them it was about a 2-year period, developing some simple models based on how much of the glacier was left and our best prediction of what the retreat would look like, to give them some sense of what the iceberg discharge would look like. It was a good opportunity to collaborate with a state-level agency and also with the Coast Guard. We have a limited amount of bathymetry for that region. It would be good to have more, and NOAA has done some surveying in there. But that kind of interagency cooperation could be a lot more frequent than it is. And when it does happen, it's extremely beneficial. It certainly was a great help to us in Alaska.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I have a quick addition to that. In that just last summer, we saw one of the first groundings. I actually saw the vessel before it grounded of a Russian icebreaker that ended up grounding in the Northwest Passage. Exactly the places we're hoping, or we're thinking may be opportunities for more connections across the high Arctic. So it is a critical issue because it ran aground on uncharted rock,
right,
in essence. And the other piece is that the Coast Guard provides critical infrastructure to support the work we do in Antarctica. Without the U.S. Coast Guard and the heavy icebreakers, the U.S. could not run the flagship programs they do. And we are seeing the Asian countries invest deeply in icebreakers. The Chinese government has invested in 2. The Koreans have a beautiful new icebreaker. We need strong icebreaking capability, both for ability to engage in the Arctic and continue to be leaders in Antarctica.
And we have a shortage of icebreakers, do we not?
Mm-hmm. That's
Yes.
why I thought this was a moment to remind
Yes.
you of that.
Okay.
It really
Thank
is. Both boats run aground, and we need icebreakers.
All right, thank you very much. My time is long expired. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Caston.
Thank you, Madam